Patricia Clancy had understood for years that disappearing was much easier than standing out. At 16, she bore her size like heavy plates, rounded back and lowered gaze, forming her defense against a world that seemed bent on reminding her she was different. When her parents transferred her to Blackwood Academy halfway through sophomore year, she wished for a new beginning, but the comments chased her down the corridors like shadows. "Check out that hippo," she overheard someone whisper as she walked the packed hallway on her first day. The words hurt, but Patricia kept going, her books held tightly against her chest. She had heard worse things, much worse things. What they didn't realize was that beneath the baggy clothes and timid manner lived someone completely different. For the last 5 years, Patricia had been training at O'Malley's karate dojo in her old area, where her father, David, had taught her that true power came from inner strength. She had earned 2 regional trophies in the heavyweight class, her kicks carrying force that could knock down opponents twice her weight. But here, in these clean hallways filled with judgment, she was just another easy target. The eating area became her first challenge. Patricia sat by herself, poking at her salad while noises swirled around her like buzzing bees. That's when she saw them watching her. 4 girls at the popular spot, their eyes locked on her with cruel amusement. The leader was Tiffany Lancaster, a skinny redhead with the kind of self-assurance that came from always getting what she wanted. Her friends, Brittany Sawyer, Kimberly Boyd, and Stephanie Hayes, surrounded her like faithful pets, their expensive jewelry and stylish bags marking them as untouchable. "Gosh, she's using up 3 chairs," Tiffany said loudly enough for most of the eating area to hear. "Maybe she should get 3 desserts while she's at it." Giggles spread through their area, and Patricia felt her face grow hot. She wanted to vanish, to fall through the floor and never come back. Instead, she finished her salad quietly, gathering her stuff while the comments grew louder. "Seriously, who let the zoo animal in here?" Brittany's voice traveled across the room. Patricia's fingers trembled as she got up, but she didn't turn around. She couldn't. Because if she turned around, if she let them see the anger building in her chest, everything would be different. David's voice echoed in her head. "A true fighter knows when to engage and when to withdraw, Patty. Conserve your energy for when it counts." But each day made it harder to withdraw. Tiffany and her group seemed to have made themselves Patricia's personal tormentors, turning her simple act of living into a daily trial. They would bump into her in the hallways, scattering her notebooks while offering fake apologies. They would make loud remarks about her size whenever she walked by, their voices covered in false concern. "Someone should really show her the healthy food choices," Kimberly would say, just loud enough for Patricia to hear. "Maybe she doesn't realize there are other activities at this school besides eating," Tiffany would add, her friends bursting into laughter. The auditorium became their favorite hunting place. During drama rehearsal, when Mr. Henderson wasn't looking, they would make sure Patricia knew exactly where she stood in their world. When roles were assigned for the play, she was always chosen last, met with big sighs and eye rolls. When they practiced lines, Tiffany would stand next to her, offering constant commentary. "Come on, Patricia, you can do it. Just imagine you're reciting your favorite fast food menu." The other students watched with the distant interest of an audience at a show. Some looked uneasy, but no one said anything. No one interfered. They were all too glad it wasn't them in Tiffany's sights. Patricia took it all in silently, her jaw tight and fingers buried deep in her pockets. At night, she would lie awake remembering every humiliation, every hurtful word, every time when she had chosen to withdraw instead of fight back. The reasons for her restraint were simple but strong. She was new, she was outnumbered, and she was tired of being the problem everywhere she went. Fighting back would only prove what they already thought about her, that she was different, dangerous, someone to be feared rather than accepted. But more than that, she was afraid of what she might do if she lost control. In the dojo, controlled aggression was an art. In the hallways of Blackwood Academy, it would be destruction. The final straw came on a Wednesday morning in early November. Patricia had been at Blackwood for 7 weeks, and the tormenting had fallen into a predictable pattern. She had learned to steer clear of Tiffany's group, to use different paths between classes, to eat lunch in the music room instead of the eating area. She thought she had found a way to survive. She was wrong. That morning, she had worn her favorite dress, a dark green dress her aunt had given her for her last birthday. It was one of the few clothes that made her feel good, that reminded her she was more than just her size. She had even let her blonde hair hang loose around her face instead of tying it back in its usual braid. Tiffany noticed right away. "Well, well, well," she said, blocking Patricia's way to second period. "Look who's all dressed up today. You have a date, Patricia? Is there actually someone desperate enough to—" "Just leave me alone," Patricia interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What was that?" Tiffany cupped her ear dramatically. "I couldn't hear you over the sound of your shoes squeaking." Brittany, Kimberly, and Stephanie flanked her, creating a wall of mockery. Other students began to slow down, sensing trouble. Patricia felt the familiar heat of humiliation rising up her neck, but something else was building too, something darker. "I said leave me alone," she repeated, louder this time. Tiffany's eyes shone with cruel happiness. "Oh, she's got an attitude now. Girls, I think our little cow is trying to be tough." "Maybe she thinks she's scary," Kimberly added with a laugh. "The only thing scary here is her outfit," Stephanie chimed in. "Did she steal that from a garbage bag?" The hallway erupted in laughter. Patricia stood frozen in the center of it all, her chest rising and falling with quick breaths. She could feel every eye on her, could hear every whisper and laugh. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreading and expecting for weeks. "You know what?" Tiffany stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than her shouting. "I'm tired of pretending to be nice. You disgust me. Every time I look at you, I want to gag. You're a walking mess, and everyone here knows it." The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully aimed to cause maximum damage. Patricia felt something break inside her chest, a wall she had built to protect herself from exactly this moment. The carefully built barriers between her two worlds, the fighter and the victim, began to fall apart. "Nothing to say," Tiffany pressed. "What's wrong? Can't think past your next snack?" That's when Patricia's posture began to change. It was small at first, a slight straightening of her shoulders, a shift in her stance that put her weight more evenly distributed. Her fingers, which had been holding her notebook straps, slowly relaxed to her sides. She raised her head, and for the first time in 7 weeks, she looked Tiffany Lancaster directly in the eye. "Are you done?" Patricia asked, her voice steady and calm in a way that made Tiffany take an involuntary step back. "What did you just say to me?" "I asked if you were done." Patricia's voice carried a new quality, something that made the laughter in the hallway begin to die down. "Because I've been listening to your mouth for 7 weeks now, and I'm starting to think you might be the one with the problem." Tiffany's face flushed red. "You fat pig! How dare you!" "There it is," Patricia interrupted, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Your true colors. You know, Tiffany, you talk a lot about how I look, but at least I don't have to tear other people down to feel good about myself." The hallway had gone completely silent now. Students crowded closer, phones appearing as they sensed something big was about to happen. Tiffany looked around wildly, suddenly aware that the script had changed and she was no longer in control. "You think you're tough now?" Tiffany's voice cracked slightly. "You think because you finally grew a spine, you can talk to me like that?" "I think," Patricia said, taking a step forward, "that you're about to find out exactly how tough I am." The change was dramatic and immediate. Where moments before stood a hunched, apologetic girl, now stood someone completely different. Patricia's shoulders squared, her feet planted in a stance that spoke of years of training. Her eyes, which had spent weeks avoiding contact, now locked onto Tiffany with laser focus. "You want to keep talking?" Patricia asked, her voice carrying through the hallway like a challenge. "Or are you ready to back up all that talk?" Tiffany looked to her friends for support, but Brittany, Kimberly and Stephanie had gone pale, sensing something dangerous in the air. The other students formed a loose circle, their phones recording everything. "I don't fight cows," Tiffany said, but her voice wavered. "No," Patricia agreed. "You just torture them until they can't take it anymore. But here's the thing, Tiffany. I'm not a cow. I'm not your victim. And I'm definitely not afraid of you." Tiffany made her mistake then. Whether it was pride, panic, or pure stupidity, she lunged forward with her hand raised, aiming for Patricia's face. It was a wild, untrained swing that telegraphed itself from miles away. Patricia moved like quick lightning. She sidestepped the clumsy attack, caught Tiffany's wrist, and used the redhead's own momentum to spin her around. Before anyone could blink, Tiffany was face first against the lockers, her arm twisted behind her back in a hold that had her gasping in pain. "Let go of me!" Tiffany shrieked, but her voice was muffled by the metal locker. "You wanted to fight," Patricia said calmly, applying just enough pressure to make her point. "This is fighting. How do you like it?" Brittany made the mistake of rushing forward to help her friend. Patricia released Tiffany and moved to meet the attack, her body flowing through movements that had been drilled into her for years. A quick kick to Brittany's stomach dropped her to her knees, gasping for air. Kimberly and Stephanie, seeing her two friends neutralized in seconds, backed away with their hands raised. "Please," Kimberly stammered. "We didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Patricia cut her off. "You meant every word, every laugh, every time you made me feel like trash. You meant all of it." Tiffany had recovered enough to turn around, her face red with humiliation and rage. "You crazy cow! I'll have you expelled. You'll what?" Patricia stepped closer, and Tiffany instinctively pressed back against the lockers. "You'll tell everyone how the fat girl you've been tormenting for weeks just handed you your butt? You'll explain to your parents how you got beat up by someone you called a pig?" The hallway was dead silent, except for Brittany's labored breathing. Every student watched in fascination as the school's social order crumbled before their eyes. Tiffany Lancaster, untouchable Queen Bee, was cowering against a locker while her victim stood over her like a conquering hero. "Here's what's going to happen," Patricia continued, her voice never rising above conversational level. "You're going to leave me alone. All of you. You're going to find someone else to entertain you because I'm done being your show. You can't just—" Tiffany started. "I can do whatever I want," Patricia interrupted. "That's the funny thing about respect, Tiffany. You can't demand it. You can't buy it. You can't bully people into giving it to you. You have to earn it." She turned to address the crowd that had gathered. "That goes for all of you. 7 weeks I've been here, and not one of you said a word when they were tearing me apart. You all just watched, glad it wasn't you. Well, now you know I don't need your protection. I never did." Tiffany tried one last desperate move, launching herself at Patricia's back. It was another amateur mistake. Patricia heard her coming, spun around, and caught her with a perfect roundhouse kick that sent her sprawling across the hallway floor. Tiffany lay there for a moment, stunned, blood trickling from her lip. "Stay down," Patricia advised. "I won't tell you again." Tiffany looked up at her, and for the first time, Patricia saw something besides cruelty in her eyes. Fear, real, genuine fear of what she had awakened. "You're insane," Tiffany whispered. "No," Patricia replied. "I'm tired. Tired of being your victim. Tired of being afraid. Tired of pretending I'm something I'm not." She looked around at the crowd of students, their phones still recording, their faces showing a mixture of shock and awe. "My name is Patricia Clancy. I'm 16 years old. I weigh 250 pounds, and I'm a 2-time regional karate champion. I've been training to fight since I was 11, and I'm good at it, really good." She turned back to Tiffany, who was slowly getting to her feet. "You picked the wrong girl to mess with, Tiffany. You thought because I was fat, because I was quiet, because I was new, that I was weak. You were wrong." "This isn't over," Tiffany said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. "Yes, it is," Patricia corrected. "It's been over since the moment you threw that first punch. Everything after this is just you learning to live with the consequences." Principal Thompson appeared at the end of the hallway, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on here?" The students scattered like startled birds, but Patricia stood her ground. Tiffany and her friends also remained, looking battered and humiliated. "Just a misunderstanding, sir," Patricia said calmly. "We were working it out." Principal Thompson looked between the girls, taking in Tiffany's bloody lip and disheveled appearance, Brittany still clutching her stomach, and Patricia standing calm and collected in the center of it all. "Ms. Lancaster, do you need to see the nurse?" Tiffany looked at Patricia, then at the principal, then back at Patricia. "No, sir, I'm fine." "Good. All of you get to class, and if I hear about any more problems, there will be consequences for everyone involved." As the principal walked away, Tiffany leaned close to Patricia. "You think you've won something here?" "I think I've ended something here," Patricia replied. "The question is, are you smart enough to let it stay ended?" Tiffany stared at her for a long moment, then walked away without another word. Brittany, Kimberly, and Stephanie followed, casting nervous glances back at Patricia. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispered conversations and sideways glances. By lunch, the story had spread through the entire school, growing and changing with each telling. Patricia Clancy, the quiet fat girl, had taken down the most popular group in school single-handedly. But the real change was in how people looked at her. The mocking glances were gone, replaced by something else: respect, curiosity, and in some cases, fear. Patricia sat in the eating area for the first time since her first week, eating her lunch while students gave her a wide berth. She wasn't invisible anymore, but she wasn't a target either. She was simply Patricia Clancy, and that was enough. Tiffany and her friends sat at their usual table, but the atmosphere had shifted. Tiffany kept her head down, her movements subdued. The other popular kids sensed the change in power and began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with weakness. 3 weeks later, Tiffany approached Patricia at her locker. Gone was the aggressive posture, the cruel smirk, the pack of followers. She stood alone, looking smaller somehow. "I wanted to apologize," Tiffany said quietly. Patricia looked at her, taking in the genuine regret in her eyes. "For what, exactly?" "For everything. For being cruel. For making your life awful. For ... Tiffany struggled with the words. "For being everything I hate about myself." "Why?" Patricia asked. "Why did you pick on me?" Tiffany was quiet for a long moment. "Because you were different. Because you were new. Because ... She took a shaky breath. "Because I was envious." "Envious? You didn't care what anyone thought. You were just yourself. And I've spent so many years trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be that I forgot who I actually was." Tiffany's voice cracked slightly. "I took it out on you because I couldn't take it out on myself." Patricia studied her former tormentor, seeing her clearly for the first time. Beneath the expensive clothes and perfect hair was a girl just as lost and afraid as she had been. "I accept your apology," Patricia said finally, "but that doesn't mean we're friends." "I know," Tiffany nodded. I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm trying to be better." She walked away, leaving Patricia alone with her thoughts. The girl who had made her life miserable was gone, replaced by someone who seemed almost human. It was a reminder that everyone was fighting battles that others couldn't see, The rest of junior year passed peacefully. Patricia never had to fight again, but everyone knew she could. She made friends with other students who had been on the outside, forming a group of unique individuals who looked out for each other. She joined the school's karate club, becoming their best fighter and leading them to a state championship. On graduation day, as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, Patricia caught sight of Tiffany in the crowd. Their eyes met for a moment, and Tiffany gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. It wasn't friendship, but it was something. After the ceremony, Patricia's father, David, found her in the parking lot. "I heard you had some trouble at school," he said with a knowing smile. "Just had to remind someone that respect is earned, not given," Patricia replied. "And did you remember what I taught you about being a fighter?" Patricia thought about it. That real strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting yourself and others. It's about knowing when to fight and when to withdraw. "And when do you fight, Patty?" "When withdrawing stops being an option," she answered. "When someone needs to learn that actions have consequences." David nodded approvingly. "You've learned well. But remember, the strongest person in the room is often the one who doesn't need to prove it." As Patricia drove home that evening, she thought about the girl she had been when she first walked into Blackwood Academy. Scared, alone, desperate to be invisible, that girl was gone, replaced by someone who knew her value and wouldn't let anyone convince her otherwise. She had learned that tormentors were cowards at heart, that they picked on people they saw as weak because they were weak themselves. She had learned that sometimes you had to fight to find peace, that sometimes violence was the only way certain people understood. But most importantly, she had learned that she was never as helpless as she had believed. The strength had always been there, waiting for the right moment to come out. All she had needed was the courage to use it. The fat girl who had been everyone's target was gone. In her place stood Patricia Clancy, karateka, fighter, and survivor. And she was exactly who she was meant to be.